Okay, this is Algebra 1. It's a test from week number 5. This is our study guide. We're picking up on number 18, part 2 of it. 18 says use a slope and y-intercept to graph the equation. It gives us everything we need to graph it. It gives us a m and a b value. Our b value tells us where to begin. On your y-axis, that means it intercepts at -3. So at -1, 2, 3 is where your first point goes. Your m value is what multiplies mx plus b, what multiplies by x. So your m value is -2/5. That tells you to go down 2 since it's negative and 5 to the right since it's positive. So down 2 more from where we start and to the right 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for your next point. So down 2 and to the right 5 there. And when you sketch your graph, it should look something like what I have here. It's a little bit straighter than I drew on my screen. Number 19 says, a line passes through -1, -9, and 3, -2. Write an equation for the line in point slope form, and then rewrite it in standard form using only integers. So you have to do two things. But since we're writing it in point slope form, we have a point. In fact, we have two of them. We have -1, -9, and 3, -2, but we don't have a given slope value. We have to find the slope value. So your slope is going to be xy, xy, sub 1, sub 2. Your slope formula says y, your slope equals y sub 2. In this case, y sub 2 is -2 minus y sub 1, which is -9. Right there, we have minus a negative. That means we know to add that. Over x sub 2, in this case, is 3, minus x sub 1, again, which is minus a negative, which tells us to add these. So -2 plus 9 is going to be 7, and 3 plus 1 is 4. So your m value, or your slope, is 7/4. So it tells you to write it into point slope form. Use one of the points. If they both look the same, pick the first one where you don't make any mistakes. -1, -9. Point slope form looks like this. Look, it's been a few weeks since we got to it. Y minus y sub 1 equals m times x minus x sub 1, point slope form. You leave y alone with a space. You leave a space for m, and you put your parentheses with your x, and you leave one more space, and then you plug in the values you have. Where it says y minus y sub 1, this is going to be our y sub 1 value right here. It says minus that. So since it's minus, it means you want the opposite of what you see there. We see -9, so we want to put in +9. Your m value looks just like it is. M is 7/4. So m goes there. And then again, x says x minus x sub 1. So you want the opposite of that -1, and it'll be +1. So your equation in point slope form is y plus 9 equals 7/4 times x plus 1, point slope form. That's the first part. That was A. The second part says to write it in, you could have had the other equation you could have had for A is if you used the other point, you'd have had y plus 2 equals 7/4 times x minus 3. That would have just been using the second point, which would have been perfectly fine. But the second part of the problem, B, tells you to rewrite it in standard form using only integers. So let's take care of that only integers part first. It says 7/4, which means to divide by 4. You have to cancel that out because we don't want fractions. That means it's not an integer. Multiply, divide by 4. It says multiply by 4 to cancel out divide by 4. But you can't just multiply that one term. You have to multiply everything in the problem by 4. You don't have to multiply by the parentheses because it's already being multiplied by that. 4 times y is 4y. 4 times 9 is 36. And then multiplied by 4 and divided by 4 will cancel out and just leave you with 7 times x plus 1. Then all you have to do is distribute your 7. And bring everything else down and make it say standard form, ax plus by equals c. We don't quite have that. We need to move our x value over to the beginning of it. 7x is a positive on the right. When you move it over, it becomes -7x. You still have positive 4y. you still have positive 36, and you still have that canceled on the right, 7 on the right. Still don't have ax plus by equals c. You got ax plus by plus something equals c. So we got to get rid of this plus something and move it over. It says plus 36, subtract it, do it here as well. 7 minus 36 is going to be negative 29. So negative 7x plus 4y equals negative 29. ax plus by equals c. That is standard form. Are they parallel? Explain why or why not. Parallel lines have the same slope. We can see the slope of the first equation. It's 4. That means if they're parallel lines, it has to have the same slope. So we have to move that second equation around where we can see it. First thing we want to do is move 6x over. When you do that, you have negative y equals, it was positive 6x on the left, it becomes negative 6x on the right. You still have positive 6. Then get y by itself by dividing by negative 1. Do it by everything else in the equation as well. Y equals negative divided by negative is positive 6, and positive divided by negative is negative 6. Either way, you can see y equals mx plus b. You can see your m value of that equation is 6. And when you compare that to the other equation, it is not the same. Therefore, they are not parallel. And when you explain why, because they don't have the same slope, or their slopes are different, or they have different slopes. It's like different strokes. 21 says write an equation parallel to this line going through the point that's given. So if you're looking at this equation right here, y equals 2/3 x plus 6, the only thing you're interested in that to check to see what's parallel is its slope value. Its slope value is 2/3. Once you have that value, you're finished with that equation. You no longer need it, 2/3. It says write it going through that point. So you have a slope and you have a point. So use point slope form. Y minus y sub 1 equals m times x minus x sub 1. Plugging in your values. Y minus y sub 1. Your y sub 1 value is negative 3. So you put the opposite of that, plus 3. Equals m, 2/3, times x minus x sub 1. You put the opposite of negative 6 plus 6. Point slope form. Y plus 3 equals 2/3 times x plus 6. And that line is parallel because it has the same slope. Number 22. Tell whether they're parallel, perpendicular, or neither. We just said a second ago, in order for them to be parallel, they have the same slope. In order for them to be perpendicular, it has to be the negative reciprocal. Negative reciprocal means if you have a slope of negative 1/2, we know reciprocal means to flip it and make it 2/1, but negative means to make it go from either positive to negative or negative to positive. So the negative reciprocal of negative 1/2 would be positive 2 or positive 2/1. So we know what our slope is of our first equation. It's negative 2. You can see m's value, mx plus b. M is negative 2. Find the slope of the second equation. You have to do that. You have to move 12x over to the other side. When you do that, you have negative 24y on the left. Positive 12x becomes negative 12x on the right, and you still have negative 36. You don't do anything with that. When divide by negative 24, do it on the right as well. It'll cancel and leave you with y equals a negative divided by negative is a positive. 12 goes into both of them, 1/2x. 12 goes into both of these. A negative divided by negative, again, is a positive 3/2. But what we're interested in is its slope value, 1/2. So clearly, it's not the same slope value as the other one. Negative 2 is not the same. So parallels out. So we got to check and see if it's perpendicular. Again, perpendicular, the first slope was negative 2, which is over 1. Perpendicular means you flip it, and it becomes 1/2, and you do the negative reciprocal part, which means since it's already negative, it'll become positive. So it would have to be positive 1/2 in order to be perpendicular, and that's exactly what it is. So it says tell whether it's perpendicular. Yes, it's perpendicular. And if it had said explain why, you would say because the slopes are negative reciprocals. 23 says write an equation that's perpendicular to this that passes through the point given. Again, if it's perpendicular, all you're interested in is the m value. So this m value is -6. I'm sorry. That I was looking at it as if it was point slope form. This equation's in standard form. 2x minus 3y is -6. You need to find out what the slope is. Move 2x over. So you have -3y equals -2x minus 6. Get rid of -3 times something by dividing by -3. Y equals +2 over 3x. Negative divided by negative is a +2. So now you can see what your m value is. Your m value is 2/3. But we're writing something that's perpendicular. So you take 2/3 and you look at its negative reciprocal. Flip it, it becomes 3 over 2. Positive becomes negative. So the new slope you're going to use is -3 over 2. It says it goes through the point -8, 2. So write it. You got point and you got slope. Write it in point slope form. Y minus y sub 1 equals m times x minus x sub 1. M's value is -3 over 2. The opposite of x, it says -8 is +8, and the opposite of y, it says +2 is -2. Y minus 2 equals -3 over 2 times x plus 8.